The morning sun hadn't fully climbed over the city skyline yet, but inside the Meridian Grand Hotel, the breakfast buffet was already humming with quiet energy. Soft classical music played in the background, silver trays gleamed under warm lights, and the scent of fresh coffee, buttery pastries, and scrambled eggs drifted through the air. Most guests were business travelers in crisp shirts, sipping espresso while scrolling through emails, or couples on vacation, laughing over shared plates of fruit. At a corner table near a tall potted fern, a man sat alone. He wore a simple navy sweater, dark slacks, and well-worn leather shoes. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed important. To anyone passing by, he looked like just another guest enjoying a quiet start to his day. But he wasn't just any guest. His name was Elias, and this hotel, every marble floor, every chandelier, every linen napkin was his. He owned it. Not on paper alone, but in the way someone owns a dream they've poured their life into. Elias came here like this once a month. No suit, no entourage, no name tag. He called it walking in the shoes of a stranger. He believed that if you wanted to know how your place truly felt to the people who stayed there, you had to forget you owned it. So he'd slip in early before the managers arrived, before the staff settled into their routines, and just watch, listen, feel. Today he'd ordered black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and a small bowl of oatmeal. He wasn't hungry, really. He was here to see if the new head chef had fixed the oversalted potatoes from last month, but his attention kept drifting toward the buffet line, where an elderly man stood hesitating near the bread station. The man was thin, with silver hair combed neatly to the side and a slight stoop in his shoulders, as if years of carrying something heavy had gently bent him. He wore a suit that had clearly seen better days, faded at the elbows but clean, pressed and buttoned with care. He moved slowly, not because he was frail, but because every step seemed deliberate, thoughtful. He picked up a plain slice of white toast, set it gently on his plate, then reached for a small pat of butter. He didn't take the fancy jams or the artisanal honey, just toast. And then, at the beverage station, he filled a cup with weak tea, barely any color to it, and carried his modest breakfast to a table by the window. Elias watched him settle in, hands resting on the table like he was giving himself a moment before eating. There was a quiet dignity in the way he sat, back straight, eyes calm, taking in the morning light. He didn't look around for attention, didn't seem to care that others were eating smoked salmon and Belgian waffles while he had dry toast and watered-down tea. Then the mood shifted. Two young employees, front desk clerks, judging by their uniforms, walked in through the staff entrance laughing loudly. They were off duty, grabbing a quick bite before their shift started. One carried a tray piled high with bacon, pancakes, and orange juice. The other balanced a mountain of scrambled eggs and hash browns. They spotted an empty table near the elderly man and sat down without a second thought. At first it was just chatter, normal, light banter about last night's game or a funny TikTok. But then one of them glanced at the man by the window and nudged his friend. "Look at that," he said, voice low but not low enough. "Some people really think this place is a soup kitchen." His friend snorted. "Yeah, I saw him checking in last night. Paid in cash, too. Bet he's one of those travel hackers who finds loopholes to stay for free." They both laughed, but it wasn't the warm kind. It was sharp. Mocking, Elias's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. The clerks kept going, louder now, as if they wanted to be heard. "Did you see how he stared at the caviar like he'd never seen food before?" one said, mimicking wide eyes and a slack jaw. The other copied the man's slow walk as he'd returned his tray earlier, shuffling exaggeratedly in his seat. "Oh, excuse me, sir, may I please have one piece of bread?" he drawled in a fake, trembling voice. A few nearby guests glanced over, uncomfortable. One woman shifted her chair slightly away. Another looked down at her phone, pretending not to hear. No one said anything. No one defended the man, and the elderly man? He didn't flinch. Didn't turn around. He just kept sipping his tea, his gaze fixed on the street outside where a street sweeper was pushing his cart down the sidewalk. But Elias, watching closely, saw the way the man's fingers tightened around the cup, saw the slight dip of his chin, the way his throat moved when he swallowed. Too slow, too controlled. He was holding himself together piece by quiet piece. Elias felt a knot form in his chest. This wasn't just rudeness. It was cruelty dressed up as humor, and it was happening in his hotel. in a space he'd built to feel welcoming, safe, even luxurious for anyone who walked through the doors, regardless of how much they spent or what they wore. He wanted to stand up, to walk over, identify himself, and put a stop to it right then. But he didn't, not yet, because something deeper was pulling at him, the need to understand. Who was this man? Why was he here? And why did his presence provoke such unkindness from people trained to be gracious? So Elias stayed still. He finished his coffee, his eyes never leaving the window seat. The clerks eventually finished their meal, tossing their napkins onto the table like they owned the place, and strolled off toward the front desk, still chuckling. The elderly man remained. He ate his toast slowly, methodically, as if each bite mattered. When he was done, he wiped his mouth with the cloth napkin, folded it neatly beside his empty plate, and stood. He carried his tray to the return station, scraped his single plate into the bin, stacked it with care, and placed his cup in the correct slot. Then he walked out, not with shame, but with a quiet kind of strength that made Elias sit up a little straighter. For a long moment, Elias just stared at the empty chair by the window. The buffet buzzed on around him, knives clinking, guests chatting, coffee machines hissing, but everything felt muffled, distant. All he could think about was the look in that man's eyes. Not angry, not sad, just tired. Tired of being seen as less. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook he always carried. On a fresh page, he wrote 2 words: find him. Because this wasn't just about breakfast anymore. It was about respect. About who gets to feel welcome in a place and who decides that. And Elias knew deep in his gut that if he didn't do something, that quiet dignity he'd just witnessed might never return to his hotel again. He stood, left a generous tip under his cup, and walked out, not as the owner, but as someone who suddenly remembered what really mattered. The next morning, Elias arrived even earlier. The sky was still gray at the edges, and the city hadn't fully woken up yet. He wore the same plain sweater, same quiet shoes, same unassuming air, but this time he wasn't just observing. He was looking for someone. He took the same corner table near the fern, ordered the same black coffee, and kept his eyes on the entrance. The buffet staff moved in practiced rhythm, refilling trays, wiping spills, arranging pastries with care. Everything looked perfect on the surface, polished, professional. But Elias knew better now. Perfection meant nothing if kindness wasn't part of the recipe. Then, just after 7, he saw him. The elderly man walked in again, same worn suit, same careful steps. He didn't glance around nervously or shrink into himself. He simply moved through the space like he belonged because he believed he did. And that quiet confidence was more powerful than any uniform or title. Elias watched as the man filled his plate. 1 boiled egg, a slice of whole wheat toast, a small bowl of plain yogurt, no frills, no waste, just enough. He carried it to the same window seat as yesterday, placed his napkin on his lap, and began to eat. Elias waited a few minutes, letting the man settle. Then he stood tray in hand and walked over, not too fast, not too hesitant. He stopped beside the table and offered a small, genuine smile. Mind if I join you? Every other table seems full. The man looked up, surprised but not startled. His eyes were warm, the kind that had seen a lot but hadn't turned cold. He nodded slowly. Of course. Plenty of room. Elias sat, setting his tray down gently. He'd taken a little more this time, some fruit, a croissant, but nothing extravagant. He didn't want to make the man feel like he was being compared. For a moment, they ate in silence. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. Inside, the soft clink of cutlery filled the air. Then the man spoke, voice calm and steady. You're not from around here, are you? Elias shook his head. Just passing through. Needed a quiet place to think. The man nodded like he understood. This hotel used to be quieter, simpler, back when the lobby had wooden benches and the front desk was run by a man who remembered your name. There was a fondness in his tone, not bitterness. Just memory, Elias leaned in slightly. You've stayed here before? Oh, not as a guest, the man said with a soft chuckle. I worked here, years ago, night auditor, from 78 to 92. Back then it was just the Meridian Inn, 2 floors, no spa, no fancy breakfast buffet. We served coffee and toast in the morning, and if you were lucky, Mrs. Callahan from housekeeping would sneak you a homemade muffin. Elias felt something shift inside him. This man hadn't just wandered in. He had history here. Roots. I saved up for months, the man continued, stirring his tea slowly, to stay here. Just one night. For my birthday. 82 feels like a milestone, you know? I wanted to sit where I used to work. But as someone who's finally allowed to rest, Elias's throat tightened. He thought of the clerks' laughter, their mocking voices, their complete lack of awareness that the man they were ridiculing had once helped build the very place they now took for granted. You deserve more than one night, Elias said quietly. The man smiled, a small, humble thing. I don't need more, just to feel seen, not as a burden, not as someone out of place, just as a person who once cared for this place and still does. They talked a while longer, about the old days, the snowstorm of '83 when the boiler broke and the night staff huddled in the lobby with blankets and hot cocoa. About the regular guests who'd come back every summer, always requesting the same room. About how the hotel used to play soft jazz in the evenings, not corporate playlists. Elias listened. Really listened. Not as an owner, not as a businessman, but as someone who suddenly realized his hotel wasn't just bricks and service standards. It was made of stories. And this man held one of the oldest, quietest, most important ones. When the man finished his tea, he stood to leave. Thank you for the company, he said. It's rare to share a meal with someone who doesn't look at you like you're taking up space. Elias stood too. I hope you'll come back tomorrow. Maybe try the pancakes. They're actually not bad, the man chuckled. Maybe I will. After he left, Elias didn't move for a long time. He stared at the empty chair, replaying every word. Then he walked to the front desk, not as a guest, but as himself. The two clerks from yesterday were on duty, typing away at their computers, sipping from hotel mugs. They brightened when they saw him, straightening up instantly. Good morning, sir. How can we help you? Elias didn't smile. He leaned slightly on the counter, voice low but firm. Tell me, what's our policy on treating guests with respect? They exchanged a quick glance, confused. We always treat guests with the highest level of courtesy, sir, one said quickly. Even the ones who don't order champagne for breakfast? Elias asked, holding their gaze. A flicker of recognition passed between them. Their faces paled. Elias didn't accuse, didn't yell. He just said, I saw what happened yesterday, and I heard it too. Silence fell over the desk. One clerk looked down at his shoes. The other swallowed hard. I'm not here to fire you, Elias continued, but I am here to remind you, this hotel isn't just a building. It's a home, for travelers, for dreamers, for people celebrating, grieving, starting over. And every single person who walks through that door deserves to feel welcome. No exceptions. He paused, letting it sink in. You'll both attend empathy training next week. And for the next 7 days, you'll shadow the housekeeping and concierge teams. No talking, just watching, helping, learning. You'll see what it's like to serve without being seen. Maybe then you'll understand that dignity doesn't come from how much someone spends. It comes from how they're treated. He turned to leave, then stopped. And one more thing, his name is Mr. Lin. He worked here for 14 years. He kept this place running while most of us were asleep. Remember that. As he walked away, Elias didn't look back. But inside something had changed, not just in the hotel, but in him. He'd come to observe. But he'd ended up remembering what hospitality really meant. Not perfection, but humanity. Not performance, but presence. And tomorrow he'd make sure Mr. Lin got more than just toast. He'd make sure he got the welcome he'd earned, long ago and again today. The next morning, Elias didn't go to the buffet right away. Instead, he met with the head of housekeeping, a woman named Rosa who'd been with the hotel for over 20 years and knew every guest's coffee preference before they did. He asked her to prepare something special for the window table. Fresh fruit, warm sourdough, soft scrambled eggs with chives, and a pot of properly steeped jasmine tea. Nothing flashy, he said, just thoughtful. Rosa raised an eyebrow but didn't ask why. She'd learned long ago that when Elias asked for thoughtful, it usually meant someone mattered more than they appeared to. At 7:05 a.m., Mr. Lin walked in again. He paused just inside the doors, as if checking whether the air still felt safe. Then he saw the table by the window, already set, not with a reservation sign but with a small white card resting beside a folded napkin. He approached slowly, picked up the card, and read the words written in neat, careful handwriting. For someone who remembers when the Meridian had soul. A quiet smile touched his lips. He sat. Elias watched from a few tables away, hidden behind a newspaper he wasn't really reading. He saw Mr. Lin lift the teapot, pour himself a cup, and take a slow sip. Saw the way his shoulders relaxed just a little, saw how he touched the rim of the cup like it was something precious. After a few minutes, Elias stood and walked over, not with a tray this time, but empty-handed. "Mind if I join you again?" he asked, voice light. Mr. Lin looked up and nodded. "You're becoming a habit." "Good habits are hard to find," Elias said, sitting down. This time the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, like two old friends who didn't need to fill every second with words. Outside, sunlight finally broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the tabletop. "I came back last night," Mr. Lin said after a while, stirring his tea. "To the lobby. Just stood there for a minute. The marble floor's the same. So's the grandfather clock near the elevators. Still 5 minutes slow, just like it always was." Elias smiled. Some things shouldn't change. "They kept the old key rack behind the front desk, too," Mr. Lin added, eyes distant. "Polished it up, turned it into decor. But I remember when those keys meant something. Room 214 was always the honeymoon suite. Room 108 had the leaky faucet no plumber could fix. And room 302, that was mine on my breaks. Tiny, but it had a view of the park." He fell quiet, lost in memory. Elias didn't rush him. He let the moment breathe. Then Mr. Lin looked directly at him. "You're not just passing through, are you?" Elias hesitated. He could keep pretending, but something in the man's gaze, steady, kind, knowing, made him decide otherwise. "No," he said softly. "I'm not." Mr. Lin studied him for a long moment. Then he gave a small nod as if he'd suspected all along. "You own this place. I do. And yet, you sit with me. Eat plain food. Listen to an old man's stories. Because your stories are this place," Elias said. "More than the chandeliers or the thread count on the sheets. You helped shape what this hotel became. That matters." Mr. Lin looked down at his hands, veins raised, skin thin but strong. "Most people don't care about what was. They only care about what's shiny now." "Not everyone," Elias said. "And not me." They talked more, about how the night shift used to be a quiet brotherhood of insomniacs and dreamers. About the time a lost dog wandered into the lobby and the entire staff helped find its owner. About how Mr. Lin would sometimes leave a handwritten note in a guest's room if they seemed lonely or stressed. Just a line like, "Hope your day gets brighter." "You did that?" Elias asked, surprised. "Small kindnesses don't cost anything," Mr. Lin said simply, "but they can mean everything." Elias thought about the two clerks, their careless laughter, their assumption that worth was measured in spending. He felt a pang of shame, not just for them, but for himself. He'd built a luxury hotel, but had he built a human one? Later that morning, after Mr. Lin left with a promise to return the next day, "I haven't tried the pancakes yet," he'd said with a wink. Elias called a staff meeting. Not a formal one in the conference room, but a quiet gathering in the staff lounge during the mid-morning lull. He didn't stand on a podium. He just leaned against the counter, hands in his pockets. "I want to tell you a story," he began, and he did. He told them about Mr. Lin, about the 14 years he spent watching over the hotel while the city slept, about the notes he left for strangers, about how he saved for months just to spend one night in the place he once called his second home. He didn't mention the mockery. He didn't need to. The weight of what Mr. Lin represented was enough. When he finished, the room was silent. Rosa wiped her eyes. The kitchen porter stared at his shoes. Even the usually unflappable concierge looked thoughtful. "Hospitality isn't about impressing people," Elias said. "It's about honoring them. Every single one. The ones who book suites and the ones who count their change before ordering coffee. Because you never know who's carrying a lifetime of quiet pride, or who just needs to feel like they belong for one morning." That afternoon, something small but significant happened. One of the clerks, the one who'd mimicked Mr. Lin's walk, approached Rosa during his shadow shift. "Can I help with the breakfast setup tomorrow?" he asked, voice unsteady. "I'd like to get it right." Rosa just nodded and handed him a stack of clean napkins. Meanwhile, Elias sat in his office, not looking at profit reports or occupancy rates. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out an old guest ledger from 1985, one of the few physical records he'd kept when everything went digital. He flipped through the pages until he found it. Lin, R, Night Auditor. Next to it, in faded ink, someone had written, "Always leaves the front desk spotless. Leaves a light on for late arrivals." Elias traced the words with his finger. Then he picked up his pen and wrote a new note, one that would go into Mr. Lin's room that evening, placed on the pillow like a secret gift. "Thank you for keeping the light on. We'll keep one burning for you, always." Outside, the city buzzed on, but inside the Meridian Grand, something softer had taken root. Not grand, not loud, just human, and sometimes, that's the most powerful thing of all. The next morning, the hotel felt different. Not in any way a guest would notice right away, but in the quiet spaces between actions. The way a server paused to ask if someone wanted more coffee instead of just refilling. The way the front desk clerk held the door a second longer for an elderly couple. Small things. Human things. Elias arrived early again, but this time he didn't sit in the corner. He stood near the entrance watching. Mr. Lin walked in at 7:03, same as always. But today, something unexpected happened before he even reached the buffet. One of the clerks, the younger one, the one who'd laughed loudest just days before, stepped out from behind the front desk. He wasn't in uniform. He was wearing a plain shirt and black apron, part of his shadow shift with housekeeping. He held a small tray with a single teacup and a cloth napkin. "Good morning, sir," he said, voice softer than Elias had ever heard it. We remembered you like your tea light, so I made it just how you had it yesterday." Mr. Lin stopped, looked at the young man, then at the tea, then back at his face. There was no sarcasm, no smirk, just nervous sincerity. Mr. Lin took the cup. "Thank you," he said simply. The clerk nodded, swallowed hard, and stepped back without another word. Elias watched it all from a few feet away, heart quiet in his chest. It wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't a performance. It was just one person trying, awkwardly, humbly, to make something right. And that mattered more than any rehearsed speech ever could. Mr. Lin carried the tea to his usual table. Elias followed a minute later, not wanting to crowd him but needing to be near. He sat without asking this time. Mr. Lin didn't seem to mind. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The buffet buzzed around them, guests chatting, trays clinking, coffee machines hissing, but at their table time moved slower. Then Mr. Lin set down his fork. "That young man, he's the one who was laughing the other day, isn't he?" Elias didn't lie. "He is," Mr. Lin nodded slowly. "People make mistakes. What matters is whether they're willing to see them." "He's trying," Elias said. "Trying is where healing starts," Mr. Lin replied. "I've made plenty of mistakes in my time. Said things I wish I could take back. Judged people before I knew their story." He looked out the window. Funny how life brings you back to the same lessons, just in different clothes. Elias thought about that. How easy it was to forget that everyone is fighting something you can't see. How quick people were to assume, to mock, to dismiss, especially when they felt secure in their own position. After breakfast, Mr. Lin didn't leave right away. He lingered by the lobby windows watching the street. Elias joined him. "You know," Mr. Lin said, "when I worked here, we didn't have all this polish, but we had heart." The night porter would bring soup to guests with fevers. The front desk clerk knew which regulars liked extra towels. We didn't do it for tips or reviews. We did it because it felt right. It still can, Elias said. It just got buried under routines and expectations. Maybe, Mr. Lin said. But heart doesn't disappear. It just needs reminding. Later that day, Elias walked through the staff areas, not as a boss, but as someone listening. In the kitchen, he found the other clerk, the one who'd made the snide comment about freeloaders, carefully arranging fruit on a breakfast platter. He looked up when Elias entered, eyes wide. "Sir," he started, voice tight. Elias held up a hand. "I'm not here to scold. I'm here to ask, what did you learn this week?" The young man hesitated. Then he set down the melon wedge he was holding. I never thought about who cleans the rooms after I check someone in, or who scrubs the floors at 3 a.m. so the lobby looks perfect by morning. I just saw my job as checking IDs and handing out keys." He looked down. "But this week I followed Rosa through her rounds. Saw her tuck a stuffed animal back on a child's bed because it had fallen. Saw her leave extra soap for a guest who'd run out. She didn't tell anyone. Didn't log it, just did it," he swallowed. "I realized I was part of something bigger than myself, and I messed up by acting like some guests mattered less. Elias clapped him gently on the shoulder. You're not the first, and you won't be the last, but you're choosing to do better. That's what counts. That evening, something small but powerful happened in the staff lounge. The two clerks sat together, not joking, not scrolling on their phones, but talking. Really talking. About what they'd seen, how they'd felt, how ashamed they'd been when Elias told them who Mr. Lin really was. One said, I kept thinking, what if that was my grandpa? Would I want someone laughing at him for eating toast? The other nodded. I wouldn't even be here if it weren't for people like him. People who worked hard so places like this could exist. No one recorded it. No one posted it online. But in that quiet room, a shift happened. Not just in behavior, but in understanding. Meanwhile, up in room 302, the same room Mr. Lin used to take his breaks in decades ago, Elias had arranged for a small surprise. Not champagne or chocolates. Just a framed black and white photo he'd found in the hotel archives. The original Meridian Inn staff from 1982. And there, in the back row, young and sharp-eyed, stood Mr. Lin, uniform crisp, smile quiet but proud. Beneath it, a note: some legacies don't need plaques. They live in the way a place feels when you walk in. The next morning, when Mr. Lin entered the buffet, he didn't go straight to the window table. He stopped near the entrance, looking around, not with uncertainty, but with something like wonder, because this time people looked at him differently. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with quiet respect. The server refilling orange juice gave him a nod. The pastry chef offered him a fresh croissant on the house. Even the manager, passing by with a clipboard, paused to say, Good morning, Mr. Lin. Hope you're enjoying your stay. He was. Not because of the food or the room or the view, but because for the first time in a long while he felt seen. Not as an old man with a worn suit, but as someone who mattered. And as Elias watched him take his seat, pour his tea, and smile at the sunlight on the table, he knew something important. Real change didn't come from rules or reprimands. It came from connection, from stories shared over breakfast, from one person choosing kindness, even when no one was watching. The hotel hadn't just welcomed Mr. Lin back, it had remembered its own soul. A week had passed since that first quiet morning, and the Meridian Grand felt different. Not in a way you could measure with numbers, but in the way it breathed. The air was softer, the greetings warmer. Even the way trays were carried, steady, respectful, never rushed, seemed to carry a new kind of care. Mr. Lin still came every morning. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And each day something small and thoughtful waited for him at the window table. A handwritten quote tucked under his napkin. A single gardenia in a tiny vase, or a slice of banana bread made from Rosa's mother's recipe. No fanfare, just quiet acknowledgement that he belonged. One Saturday, Elias arrived not in his usual sweater, but in a crisp white shirt. Still simple, but unmistakably the owner now. He didn't hide in the corner. He walked straight to Mr. Lin's table and sat without asking. There was no need anymore. Pancakes today? Elias asked with a smile. Mr. Lin chuckled, pushing his empty teacup aside. Tried them yesterday. Took me back to the old diner down the street, the one with the wobbly stools and the cook who called everyone honey. You remember that place? I do, Elias said. It's gone now. Turned into a phone store. A shame, Mr. Lin said softly. Some things shouldn't be replaced. Just remembered. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the morning unfold. A young couple argued playfully over the last croissant. An older woman read a book with her coffee, smiling at nothing in particular. A business traveler typed furiously, then paused to watch a bird land on the windowsill. Then Mr. Lin turned to Elias. You didn't have to do all this, you know. Do what? Elias asked. All of it. The tea, the notes, the kindness. I was just a guest. You were never just anything, Elias said gently. You were part of this place before I even knew what a balance sheet was. And when I saw how you were treated, it reminded me that luxury means nothing without decency. Mr. Lin looked down at his hands, then back up, eyes glistening but dry. Most places forget their past. They tear it down, paint over it, act like it never mattered. But you listened? I'm still learning, Elias admitted. From you. From my staff. From the quiet moments people don't post online. Later that morning, as Mr. Lin prepared to leave, the front desk wasn't just staffed. It was waiting. The two clerks stood side by side, Not in their usual uniforms, but in clean, pressed shirts. They didn't say anything at first, just handed him a small envelope. Inside was a simple card. On the front, embossed in gold, Meridian Grand, breakfast for life. Inside, a note in Elias's handwriting. Your seat by the window will always be ready, and your tea will always be light. Mr. Lin read it twice. Then he looked at the young men. Thank you, he said, voice thick but steady. Not just for this, for seeing me. One of the clerks cleared his throat. We're the ones who should thank you, sir. You reminded us why we do this job. That afternoon, Elias didn't go to his office. He walked through the hotel, not as an owner inspecting, but as a guest feeling. He saw the concierge help a lost tourist with a map, not just pointing, but walking her to the bus stop. He saw a housekeeper leave a child stuffed bear neatly propped on a pillow after making the bed. He saw a server kneel to talk to a little girl who'd dropped her orange slice, then bring her a fresh one with a smile. No one was watching. No cameras. No reviews. Just people choosing to be kind because it was right. A few days later, Mr. Lin checked out. But he didn't disappear. He came back the next week. And the week after that, not as a guest staying overnight, but as someone returning to a place that had become more than a hotel. It had become a kind of home. And every time he walked in, someone greeted him by name. Someone made sure his tea was ready. Someone saved the window seat. Elias still joined him sometimes. They never talked about policies or profits. They talked about books, old movies, the changing seasons, the way the city sounded at dawn. Simple things. Human things. One morning, as autumn leaves began to fall outside, Mr. Lin brought something with him. A small, cloth-bound journal. He slid it across the table to Elias. What's this? Elias asked. My memories, Mr. Lin said. The real ones. Not the polished version. The late-night calls from worried guests. The time the boiler exploded in January. The wedding that almost didn't happen because the groom lost the ring. All of it. I wrote it down over the years. I thought, maybe it could help you remember what this place is really made of. Elias opened it. The pages were yellowed at the edges, filled with neat, looping handwriting. The first entry read, October 12th, 1979. A woman cried in the lobby tonight. Her husband had just passed. I made her tea and sat with her until sunrise. No one asked me to, but no one should be alone in the dark. Elias looked up, eyes bright. I'll keep this safe. Don't keep it safe, Mr. Lin said. Use it, share it. Let it remind your team that they're not just serving rooms, they're holding space for people's lives. Years later, long after Mr. Lin stopped coming, his visits growing fewer as age slowed him down, the window seat was never given to anyone else without asking. A small brass plaque appeared on the table, discreet but clear, reserved in honor of those who serve with heart. And every new employee, on their first day, was handed a copy of that journal, not as a manual, but as a promise. As for Elias, he never stopped his morning walks through the buffet. He still sat quietly, still listened, still watched. But now he didn't just see guests. He saw stories, struggles, joys. And he made sure his hotel remained a place where every single one of them could unfold with dignity. Because in the end, the true measure of a place isn't in its star rating or its marble floors. It's in how it makes people feel when no one's watching. And at the Meridian Grand, thanks to one quiet man and the ripple of one act of kindness, people didn't just feel welcome. They felt seen.